Hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I am your host, as always, Nathan, and today I'm coming at you with an offensive line video. We're talking about the big boys up front, Michigan's calling card under the last 3 seasons of Jim Harbaugh, and presumably going forward under the smash era for Sharon Moore. We're going to go ahead and start off with the tackles here in this video on the left side specifically. Miles Hinton is the only returning quote-unquote starter on this offensive line. He did start games last year as well as filling in when players were hurt. However, he was not the starter, quote unquote. If we were talking about like the end of the season when the games mattered a bit more, that was Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, not Miles Hinton. However, he did end up starting the season at right tackle, where, in all honesty, he wasn't very good. However, he came in later on in the season, somewhere in the middle of the season, at left tackle, and I actually thought looked really, really, really good and way more natural at that left tackle position than at the right tackle position. And going forward, we assume that's going to be his position. I guess we don't really know, but I just think it's pretty obvious to see when he played left tackle, he looked way better than when he played right tackle. He is a very good athlete for the position, as well as just being built for it. He's 6'6", 340. I think he has long arms for the position. He looks like he has long arms. I don't know the measurement, so to speak, but I believe he's got those long arms that people look for in NFL offensive tackles. And I think Miles Hinton, if he plays as well as he did at left tackle in that small sample size that we had of him this past season, this season, I could legitimately see him being a day two pick, probably somewhere in the late second or early third round. He does technically have experience as a right tackle, so that will help his stock as well. However, if we're talking about just traits and athleticism, he does have first round traits, and that's very rare to see. Maybe not necessarily at the University of Michigan, but the past 5, 6 years or so, we really haven't had a guy like this starting at left tackle or right tackle, really, for that matter. His technique greatly improved when he transferred from Stanford to here, mainly because I believe Sharon Moore is a better offensive line coach than whoever was coaching the offensive line at Stanford at the time. I know David Shaw, who is an offensive line guru himself, was the head coach. However, I don't believe he was actively involved with coaching players on the offensive line. Either way, I think he's gotten better because he transferred to Michigan. I think his draft stock has also greatly improved from basically being non existent to now. I believe he will get drafted, probably. And I think he's got a good chance to go in day two. Andrew Gentry is pretty much universally being slotted in as the starter at right tackle, and I don't understand really anybody else that you would put there other than him. This is a guy with big time talent and upside for the position. I mean, you don't see 6'7", 6'8", somewhere around 325 to 330 very often. That's NFL size and a length. In the very limited amount of reps we've seen him on the offensive line, he looks like he can move a little bit, and at that size, that is a good indication of his overall athleticism. The feet are inconsistent, and he does give up leverage pretty easily, which is something that you see a lot in young offensive linemen that are very tall, or at least taller than everyone around them. But if Sharon Moore can get that tendency worked out from him, I believe that will ultimately make him into not just a starting offensive tackle at a Power 5 school, but probably an NFL upside kind of guy. I believe that that is not likely to be after this season, even though he is, technically speaking, draft eligible as a redshirt sophomore. However, this is someone that I think is likely going to have to return for the 2025 season if he's really going to get into that NFL draftable conversation. Now, could he surprise? Yes. Could he come out and play like a first round pick and get taken in the first round because the NFL doesn't particularly value left tackles more than right tackles like they used to? Yes, that's a possibility. Because does he have that kind of ceiling? I mean, probably. I believe he probably does because of the size and the general sense of athleticism that I get from him. However, I don't particularly think that's very likely for this season. I think he'll be good. And more importantly, speaking to the overall theme of this video that was in the title and the thumbnail, I think he's going to be better than what we had at right tackle this past season. Now, one thing that last year's offensive line does have that this year's offensive line does not have is genuine depth at the position. If either of our starting offensive tackles go down, we are in trouble. I do believe that Jeff Percy would be the backup for either left tackle or right tackle. I don't know which side of the line he plays or would be more comfortable in, but someone like Miles Hinton having experience on the right side if Andrew Gentry were to get hit, and Jeff Percy is like way, way more comfortable on the left side, then we can put him at left tackle and move Miles Hinton to right tackle. The only problem would be is Miles Hinton got hurt and Jeff Percy wasn't comfortable on the left side, which I don't know if that's the case, but that would be real bad. And the other player that I have listed here as the primary backup, so to speak, is Evan Link, who I believe is a redshirt freshman. He's either a redshirt freshman or redshirt sophomore. I'm not positive. But we honestly, and by we, I mean like the fan base, don't really know if he's going to play offensive tackle or not. Because if you look at it, some insiders have him listed at the guard position. Some insiders have him listed at the offensive tackle position. I don't know either way. But I've got him listed as the offensive tackle backup here because they don't really got anybody else right now. The offensive tackle depth is not pretty. There are a lot of guys that really just appear to be guards moving forward on this roster right now. And speaking of guards, one of the starting guards, I believe, will be Giovanni El-Hadi. And this is someone who really strikes me as an athlete for the position. And I think that he's going to be really good. That's just my opinion based off of absolutely nothing other than the general vibe I get when I watched him play in the surprisingly small amount of snaps he played. Generally speaking, the vibe I got from him is a powerful player who can move a little bit and would potentially be a guy that I would like to get on the move as a puller. And he is also someone that I think with relative ease in terms of the ability to actually move to the second level, not necessarily the technique or the ability to seal off the first guy and then move there, but like the actual physical act of moving in the second level of the defense. I think that is something that, given the technique, is likely to be good because Sharon Morris had his hands on him for 3 years. I believe this is someone that will be able to work to the second level of the defense effectively and consistently. This is a player that has a ton of upside for the position, in my belief and opinion. Kind of being the opposite of El-Hadi, we have Greg Crippen, who is likely to be, at this point, the starting center for this team. And the reason I say he's kind of the opposite of Giovanni El-Hadi is because I do have questions about his athleticism, and he's also just very clearly, between him and the player that's battling with him for the starting center position, he is not the upside pick here. He is the safe sort of, we're pretty sure he's going to do everything right and not make any mistakes kind of guy. And generally speaking, in fact, I would say nigh universally, I am always going to start the guy with higher upside rather than the guy who's better right now. But I understand why people would rather do the other thing. I just don't do that. That's just not the way I would run a football team, or really anything, to be honest with you. I'm always going to take upside over like a consistent B or B minus. I'd rather go for someone who could be an A plus but also might be an F. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of a gambler like that, I guess. But getting back to the topic at hand here, Greg Crippen, we don't really know a whole lot about him. Again, he does have some film, but right now there's not a whole lot for me to go off of in terms of what he could possibly do on this team. I could be wrong. Maybe he's clearly way better than Raheem Anderson, who's the upside player at the center position. Maybe he's way better than him, and this isn't a conversation. I don't know. I don't have access to the kind of information to where I could formulate that opinion with a definitive amount of information to back up the claim. In fact, what little we do actually know about Greg Crippen is that he and Raheem Anderson were like neck and neck for the center position last year until they convinced Drake Nugent to transfer to Michigan. And now I assume that it's once again a neck and neck battle between Greg Crippen and Raheem Anderson. And most people right now are leaning towards Greg Crippen being the starting center for this team. As for the other guard spot on this team opposite El-Hadi, we have Josh Preby, who transferred in from Northwestern, where he played at a all Big Ten team level this past season. He was named third team all Big Ten. And he's a good player. I don't know about NFL upside quite yet. I would need to actually sit down and watch film on him, which I have not done. But I think he's, worst case scenario, going to be a capable starter for this team and a positive in the run game. When it comes to the backups for the interior offensive line, I think Raheem Anderson is likely going to be the backup for left guard, center, and right guard. I think if one of those three players goes down, he's likely to just come in and be the starter either for the rest of the game or for the foreseeable future. But once again, there is not a whole lot of depth here, and I do question what this is going to look like if our starting five can't come out and just be the starting five for 13, 14, 15 games, 16 games if we're lucky. But some of the other names are Evan Link, once again, which, as I said in the backup tackle section here of this video, is listed as a tackle for some people and listed as a guard for others. So I'm also going to include him here in the backup interior offensive lineman section. Nathan Afobe is sort of the guy that people are talking about in terms of insiders for Michigan. People are talking about him as like, oh, he's the guy going forward. He's the young guy that's starting to figure it out. A lot of athletic potential. He's going to be the guy. And Connor Jones is another player that people are like, don't be surprised if he ends up getting some run with the second unit of the offensive line. Now, I don't think generally we're going to see as many backups this year in general because we're playing a real schedule, quote unquote. Like, I'm not positive we'll see the backups outside of like the last 5 minutes of the Fresno State game, because that program is a program. You know, that's a good football team. And Arkansas State is the same way. That's, yes, a group of five team, both of them, but they're well run programs, kind of like the way Bowling Green was last year. And we did see that that gave the offense in the early season a little bit of trouble. So I'm not particularly positive how much we're actually going to get to see the backups and the young guys play this year. But if we do, I think it's likely these guys that we'll see out there. So this is what I believe the starting depth chart is going to look like. At left tackle, we have Miles Hinton. At left guard, we have Giovanni El-Hadi. At center, we have Greg Crippen. At right guard, we have Josh Preby. And at right tackle, we have Andrew Gentry. Again, the guards might be flipped because I'm not positive where they're going to end up playing, but I believe Josh Preby played right guard at Northwestern. So I'm going to go ahead and slot him here as the right guard for this team right now. He may end up being the left guard, I don't know, but I believe he played on the right at Northwestern, so that's my logic for keeping him on the right here. The backups, I believe, would look something like this. Jeff Percy would be the backup at either tackle position, most likely, in my opinion. Again, if the right tackle ended up getting hurt, I think they would probably just move Miles Hinton to right tackle, where he did play a little bit last year, and then Jeff Percy would probably be the left tackle. Unless Jeff Percy is more comfortable on the right side, then I could see the opposite happening. But I don't know for sure. I don't have access to that kind of information to see which side of the ball Jeff Percy prefers to play on. I put Nathan Afobe here as the backup for the left guard spot. Again, I don't know which side he prefers playing on, but I just put him there because if one of the guards gets hurt, it's probably going to be Raheem Anderson. But you could also see a scenario where they're like, okay, we're going to play the young guy and we're going to keep Raheem Anderson on the back until we need him. And then center and right guard, I've got Raheem Anderson, even though he's probably in all likelihood just going to be the backup for every single interior spot, and Percy is going to be the backup for both tackle spots. But I kind of threw Nathan Afobe in there just for a little bit of variety so that it wasn't only two people on the depth chart. Now, normally I end the videos with the depth charts, and I'm not doing that today because, as I hinted at earlier in this video, and with the thumbnail and title of this video, I think there is a very significant possibility, provided that the starting five remains healthy for the whole season, that this offensive line is going to be better than it was last year. Michigan's offensive line last year was what I would quantify as good, borderline great. I think if I were to dive deeper into the numbers for other teams and try and figure out like a ranking of the offensive lines, Michigan would probably rank somewhere between 15 and 20. And when you look at the advanced numbers here a little bit, which I got from Pro Football Focus, which does do college stuff as well. And Pro Football Focus isn't the end-all, be-all, but they do a very, very good job. And whether or not you can agree with their grades or their grading system, they watch every single snap several times to grade every single player that's on the field for every single snap of every single football game. So they're doing the work. And it is a useful shorthand because, generally speaking, they're right. On the big picture stuff, they are correct far more often than they are incorrect. However, when you get to the individual level, I do believe that they are wrong, or at least maybe incorrect, a bit more frequently than. If we're talking about an individual player, I think you're probably correct. But when we're talking about big picture stuff, I'm going to lean more towards them being correct. Okay, now that I've gotten my PFF spiel out of the way here, let's get into the numbers here. Okay, Michigan's offensive line ranked 49th in pass blocking, or if we're just talking about the Power 5, they ranked 30th out of 68. So the reason that I wanted to differentiate between the Power 5 and college football as a whole is because the Group of 5 this past year and the Power 5, which is now the Power 4, are different levels of football completely. Okay? They're effectively a Division 1 and a Division 2. Even though that's not the terminology that we use, that's about the way that it is. Or it's like a AAA baseball team versus a AA baseball team for the Group of 5. But another reason is when you compare Michigan's offensive line to the highest division of college football in general, they rank in the 63rd percentile. So that would be 49th out of 133 this past season. It is now 134. But this past season, it was 133. However, last year, there were 68 Power 5 teams. This year, again, I think there's 4 more, but I'm not positive. Either way, when you talk about just the Power 5, Michigan was in the 55th percentile, which instead of being better than almost 2/3 of offensive line, you're now slightly better than half of them. Meaning Michigan, in reality, when it comes to pass blocking, was much closer to an average Power 5 offensive line than it was to like a good Power 5 pass blocking offensive line. Now, when it comes to the actual numbers on how they got to that grade and stuff like that, on 287 dropbacks, which is not the total amount of times Michigan threw the ball last year. They threw the ball more than 287 times. On 287 dropbacks with J.J. McCarthy as the quarterback, because I figured when J.J. McCarthy was going to be in the game, that was also likely going to be the starting offensive line in the game. So I figured that would be a rough equivalency to talk about just the starting offensive line, as opposed to having worse players that were playing in garbage time and were more likely to give up bad plays or pressures or not be good in the run game or as good in the run game and kind of drag the overall grade for the offensive line down. So all of these numbers are with the 287 dropbacks with J.J. McCarthy as the quarterback. It is also only in the regular season, which I forgot to say until now, because once you start including postseason, the numbers change dramatically. And I don't think it's because Michigan's offensive line played so much better in the postseason. I think it was because there were so many opt-outs and transfers that so many other offensive lines played so much worse that it actually bumped Michigan's offensive line up in the number rankings because they were actually playing football that mattered at that point in time. So that's where I get the 287 dropbacks from, even though J.J. McCarthy had, I think, 340 or so, if you include the 3 postseason games. Now, as far as run blocking goes, Michigan ranked 10th overall in all of college football and 8th in the Power 5. So they were a great borderline elite run blocking unit. And I think there's a possibility Michigan might take a slight step back there. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up being somewhere in the 12 to 15 range in the Power 5, even though effectively they were the same. But I'm just going to be talking about the Power 5 here. In the Power 5, it would not surprise me if Michigan ended up being in the 12 to 15 range. However, I think Michigan's pass blocking is going to be significantly better than it was this past season. I think there's a real possibility that we got better at both tackle positions and a guard position at left guard with Giovanni El-Hadi. In terms of not just pass blocking, but overall athleticism, I think this is the most athletic offensive line Michigan has had, at least under the past 3 years of the last 3 years of Jim Harbaugh's reign. And the numbers kind of show that out here a little bit. Ladarius Henderson last year at left tackle had a pass blocking grade of 44.7 for the whole year. So that includes Alabama, where he got beat up on relentlessly, and I think quite literally they gave him a 0.00 pass blocking grade for that game, which is ridiculous because he didn't give up a sack. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the only sack that Michigan gave up that game versus the extraordinarily overrated Alabama defensive line, they had Dallas Turner and basically nobody else, was that play where Alex Orji was in at quarterback, and they had always ran when Alex Orji was in the game, but then they put him in the game. They were, I think, trying to catch Alabama off guard and hoping somebody was just going to be wide open and Alex Orji could throw the ball to him. But that's not what happened. So Alex Orji ran out of bounds, and Dallas Turner was the closest player to him, so he got credited with the sack. I believe that's the only sack Michigan gave up that game. So I do think that PFF was kind of wrong with Ladarius Henderson's pass blocking grade a little bit, but he was very clearly not the best pass blocker in the world. And for reference, Miles Hinton's grade at right tackle and left tackle this past season was 72.4, which is a almost 30-point improvement at your left tackle position in terms of pass blocking. And Carson Barnhart graded out as a pass blocker. Again, he spent the majority of the season at right tackle before kicking inside halfway through Ohio State. But he graded out as a 57.0 pass blocking grade. And the way the PFF's grading system works is, generally speaking, if you're in the 50s, you're bad. If you're in the low 60s, you're below average. The mid 60s, you're average. High 60s, above average. If you're in the 70s, you're different levels of good. If you're in the 80s, you're great. And if you're in the 90s, you're elite at something. So Miles Hinton was a good pass blocker according to their grading system, and Ladarius Henderson was one of the worst in the country. So even though I don't necessarily agree with that grade that they have for Ladarius Henderson, I do think it is a definitive upgrade at the left tackle position in terms of pass blocking. And when it comes to right tackle, I don't particularly believe it's going to be all that hard for Andrew Gentry to be better than Carson Barnhart in terms of pass blocking. Run blocking, Carson Barnhart was actually really good. But when it comes to pass blocking, I think Andrew Gentry, purely because of his size and his length, is likely going to be better than Carson Barnhart. And it's these factors, along with the fact that I don't think we're going to see that much of a drop-off from interior line play. In fact, I actually think we could potentially get better. I think they all have higher ceilings than, at least last year, Drake Nugent at center and Trevor Keegan at left guard. Probably not Zach Zinner at right guard, who was getting talked about in the first round before I got hurt. Nevertheless, I think this is a group that overall definitely could be better and improved from last year to this year, even though it's 5 different starters. But that's just me, and what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. And it is this point that I would like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagreed with any point, or you just have something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. And now with the outro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.